They say the silence of deep space is the loudest thing you'll ever hear, but they're wrong. The loudest thing in the galaxy is the sound of 400 elite Galactic Concordance officers holding their breath as you're marched toward a throne made of dying stars. My name is Elias Thorne, a simple human structural engineer who was, until 10 minutes ago, enjoying a lukewarm bowl of synthetic protein in the cafeteria. Now I was being escorted by two Valine enforcers whose bioluminescent skin flickered with a rhythmic crimson pulse, the universal sign for "you are already dead. You just haven't stopped moving yet." I didn't have a weapon. I didn't have a plan. All I had was the lingering taste of recycled coffee and the terrifying knowledge that Queen Xylara, the sovereign of the Obsidian Nebula, had personally demanded my presence. The doors to the High Command Wing didn't just open. They retreated, sliding into the walls with a hiss that sounded like a predator baring its teeth. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of ozone and ancient spice. And there she was. Queen Xylara didn't sit on her throne, she dominated it. Her eyes were pools of molten violet, glowing with a rage so intense it felt like heat on my skin. She was beautiful in the way a supernova is beautiful, breathtaking, yet capable of erasing everything in its path. As I stepped onto the polished obsidian floor, the whispers of the gathered dignitaries vanished. Every sensor, every eye, and every high-definition camera in the room was fixed on the solitary human in grease-stained coveralls standing before the most powerful woman in the known universe. Elias Thorne. Her voice vibrated through the floorboards, a low melodic growl that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Do you realize that by your actions this morning, you have insulted the honor of the Obsidian dynasty? Do you realize that the penalty for such a transgression is total planetary embargo?" I froze. My mind raced through the last 3 hours. I'd fixed a leaking coolant valve in Sector 4. I'd recalibrated a gravity stabilizer. I'd shared a joke with a docking technician. Which one of those was a death sentence? I looked up, meeting that violet fire, and felt a strange, defiant spark of human stubbornness flare up in my chest. If I was going to go down, I wasn't going to go down shaking. "Hold on before we get into the real stuff. I want to know. What are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments." The Queen stood up, her silken robes flowing like liquid midnight. She began to descend the crystalline steps, her gaze never leaving mine. With every step she took, the guards tightened their grip on their pulse rifles. She stopped just inches from me, so close I could smell the faint, intoxicating scent of starlight and wild orchids. She leaned in, her breath cold against my ear, and whispered a command that made my heart stop. "Kneel," she whispered, the word carrying a weight that felt heavier than the artificial gravity of the station. I didn't hesitate. My knees hit the obsidian floor with a dull thud that echoed through the silent hall. To the 400 witnesses watching, this was the ultimate humiliation, a lowly human engineer broken by the sheer presence of the sovereign. But as I looked down at the polished floor, reflecting the terrified flicker in my own eyes, I realized she wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking only at me, and for a split second, the molten violet of her gaze softened into something that looked dangerously like desperation. The Valine enforcers shifted their weight, their translucent armor humming with lethal energy. They expected an execution. The high diplomats leaned forward in their hovering pods, their sensory tendrils twitching in anticipation of a scandal that would reshape galactic borders. Queen Xylara reached out, her fingers long, elegant, and tipped with shimmering obsidian claws tracing the line of my jaw. The touch wasn't cold, it was electric. A jolt of pure energy surged through my nervous system, a biological handshake that only certain species could trigger. "My queen," one of the advisors hissed, a spindly creature with too many eyes and a voice like grinding gravel. "The human's transgression in the ancient relic chamber is a stain upon." Silence. Xylara's voice didn't just command. It shattered the air. She didn't turn to look at him. Her focus remained locked on me, You think you know why he is here? You think you understand the insult he has dealt to my house?" She laughed, a sound like silver bells ringing in a storm. "He did not merely fix a cooling valve in the relic chamber. He touched the heart of the nebula. He touched the one thing in this universe that is forbidden to all but the blood of the sovereign." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I remembered the valve. It had been glowing a soft pulse-like blue, tucked behind a pillar of ancient sentient stone. I had touched it to check the temperature, and for a heartbeat, the stone had felt warm, like a living pulse. I hadn't realized I was breaking a law older than my entire civilization. I had just been doing my job. "The heart reacted to him," Xylara continued, her voice dropping back to that intimate, terrifying whisper. She leaned down, her face inches from mine, her scent filling my senses until the rest of the room blurred into a haze of gray and shadow. It didn't just glow, Elias Thorne. It sang a melody that has been silent for 10,000 years. A melody that speaks of a bond that defies biology, defies distance, and defies the very laws of the concordance. The room erupted. Arguments broke out in a dozen different alien tongues. The enforcers stepped forward, their rifles leveling at my chest. They saw a threat. They saw a human who had somehow hijacked their most sacred artifact. But Xylara didn't move. She shielded me with her own body, her silken robe sweeping over my shoulders like a protective shroud. "He is not a prisoner," she declared, her violet eyes flashing with a new, predatory light. "He is the catalyst. And since he has seen fit to wake the heart, he will now have to face the consequence of his curiosity." She gripped my tunic, pulling me upward until I was standing, chest to chest with the most feared woman in the galaxy. "You're coming with me, human, to the inner sanctum. And if you cannot finish what you started, neither of us will leave that room alive." The inner sanctum wasn't a room. It was a cathedral of light and living geometry. As the heavy blast doors sealed behind us, the roar of the angry diplomats faded into a haunting, rhythmic hum. It sounded like a heartbeat, slow and ancient, vibrating through the very solace of my boots. I looked around, my engineer's brain trying to make sense of the architecture. The walls weren't made of metal or stone. They were woven from shimmering filaments of pure energy, pulsing with a soft, ethereal violet that matched the Queen's eyes. In the center of the chamber floated the heart of the nebula. It was a jagged, crystalline core that defied gravity, spinning slowly in a cradle of golden rings. It looked like a captured star, beautiful and terrifying. Xylara let go of my tunic, but she didn't step away. The air between us felt charged, thick with an unspoken tension that made my skin tingle. She looked at the crystal, then back at me, her expression a complex mask of royal duty and raw, human-like vulnerability. "You have no idea what you've done, do you, Elias?" she asked, her voice soft now, stripped of the regal authority she used in the throne room. "To your people, this is just technology. A power source, a relic of a dead civilization. But to my kind, the Velini, this is our soul. It has been dormant since the Great Silence, and it was prophesied that only a touch of pure, selfless intent could reignite it." I looked at my hands, greasy, calloused, and shaking. "I was just trying to stop a radiation leak, Your Majesty. I didn't mean to reignite your soul. I'm just an engineer." "That is exactly why it responded," she whispered, stepping closer until the heat from her body was a physical weight against mine. "You didn't come here seeking power. You didn't come seeking worship. You came to heal something that was broken. In a galaxy of conquerors and politicians, a human walked into the holiest site in the nebula and tried to fix it because it was the right thing to do." Suddenly, the heart flared. A beam of brilliant, blinding white light shot out from the crystal, striking the center of my chest. I gasped, my lungs seizing as a flood of images, emotions, and memories that weren't mine poured into my mind. I saw the birth of the Veline, the collapse of stars, and a recurring vision of a pair of hands, human hands, intertwined with obsidian claws. It was a bond across time, A bridge between two species that should never have met. The pain was sudden and sharp, like a needle of ice driven into my heart. I stumbled back, my vision blurring, but Xylara caught me. Her arms were surprisingly strong, wrapping around me as we both collapsed onto the shimmering floor. The energy from the heart was arcing between us now, weaving a web of light that tethered our souls together. "Elias, stay with me," she cried, her regal composure shattering. For the first time, I saw a tear track down her iridescent cheek. If the connection breaks now, the feedback will vaporize this entire station. You have to hold on. You have to accept the link. I reached out, my fingers finding hers, and as our hands locked, the agonizing pain transformed into a surge of pure, overwhelming euphoria. But as the light reached a deafening crescendo, a warning light flashed on my internal HUD. The station's security protocols had been tripped. From the other side of the door, I heard the unmistakable sound of a thermal charge being set. The High Council wasn't coming to rescue us. They were coming to destroy the human infection before it changed their world forever. The explosion didn't just rattle the room. It felt like the universe itself had developed a sudden, violent cough. The massive blast doors, designed to withstand a supernova's sneeze, buckled inward as the Council's purification team blew the hinges. Through the smoke and the shimmering haze of the energy field, I saw them black armored silhouettes wielding pulse cannons, their intent clear: sanitize the room, delete the human, and protect the Queen from the very bond she had just embraced. "Don't move," Xylara hissed, but she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the soldiers. She stood up, her robes tattered but her presence more formidable than any weapon. The light from the heart was still anchored to my chest, a tether of pure starlight that forced her to stay within 3 feet of me. We were literally joined at the soul, and the sight of it sent the lead officer into a state of visible shock. "Your Majesty, step away," the officer bellowed, his voice distorted by a combat respirator. "The human has contaminated the relic. We have orders to neutralize the threat and reset the core." "Reset the core?" Xylara's laugh was cold enough to freeze the oxygen in the room. "The heart is finally beating again after 10,000 years of silence, and you want to kill the man who gave it life? You call this protection? I call it treason." The officer didn't lower his weapon. He couldn't. He was a creature of logic and old-world dogma, and what he saw was a breach of everything the Valine stood for. He signaled his men. "By order of the High Council, the Sovereign is deemed compromised. Fire!" Time slowed down. I've spent my life studying the physics of motion, but nothing prepared me for this. As the red bolts of plasma tore through the air, I didn't think. I just reacted. It's a human thing, the fight or flight that keeps our species alive when the rest of the galaxy is still busy filling out forms. I lunged forward, pulling the energy tether with me, and threw my body in front of Xylara. I expected to feel the searing heat of a plasma bolt. I expected my story to end right there on that obsidian floor. Instead, there was a sound like a gong being struck in a vacuum. The light connecting me and the Queen expanded, forming a translucent violet dome that swallowed the plasma fire as if it were nothing more than a handful of thrown sand. The heart of the nebula hummed in a low, satisfied tone. It wasn't just a battery, it was a shield. And it was protecting us. The soldiers froze. Their weapons were useless against the very power they worshipped. Xylara stepped up behind me, her hand resting firmly on the small of my back. I could feel her heartbeat through the connection, synchronized perfectly with mine. "You see?" she said, her voice echoing through the entire station's comm system. "The heart does not choose based on rank or bloodline. It chooses based on the spirit, and this human, this Elias Thorne, has a spirit that burns brighter than your sun's." She leaned into my shoulder, her voice dropping to a whisper that only I and the heart could hear. "They won't stop, Elias. The Council will send the entire fleet to bury this truth. We have to leave, now." "Leave?" I gasped, the adrenaline finally starting to fade into a cold realization. "Go where?" We're on a space station in the middle of a hostile empire." She looked at the spinning crystalline core, then back at me with a look of terrifying resolve. "We don't need a ship. We have the heart. But to use it, you have to trust me more than you've ever trusted another living soul. If you let go of my hand, we both vanish into the void." I looked at her hand, slender, powerful, and glowing with the residual heat of the nebula, and I didn't see an alien queen. I saw a partner. I reached out and gripped her fingers, lacing mine through hers. The moment our skin touched, the violet dome around us didn't just brighten. It turned into a blinding, roaring sun. The Valine soldiers were thrown backward by the sheer atmospheric pressure of the energy surge. The floor beneath us felt like it was liquefying, turning from solid obsidian into a pool of pure, conceptual light. "Close your eyes," Xylara commanded. I didn't need to be told twice. Suddenly, the sensation of weight vanished. My stomach did a somersault as the feeling of the space station, the recycled air, the hum of the engines, the smell of ozone simply blinked out of existence. For a terrifying second, there was nothing. No sound, no breath, just the crushing pressure of Xylara's hand in mine. Then, as quickly as it had vanished, the world slammed back into reality. I fell forward, my knees hitting soft, damp earth. I gasped, drawing in a lungful of air that tasted of wild jasmine and heavy rain. It was thick, sweet, and real. I opened my eyes and scrambled to my feet, expecting to see the metal corridors of the station. Instead, I was standing in a forest of towering silver-leaf trees that stretched up toward a sky of deep indigo, illuminated by 3 shimmering moons. Where are we?" I stammered, my head spinning. "The cradle," Xylara whispered. She was standing a few feet away, her royal robes torn and stained with dirt, but she looked more radiant than I had ever seen her. "The origin point of my people. A place that has been lost to the maps for 5 millennia. The heart didn't just teleport us, Elias. It brought us home." I looked down at my chest. The glowing tether was gone, but in its place, right over my heart, was a faint, shimmering brand, the mark of the nebula. It pulsed with a soft light, a permanent reminder of the bond. I looked at Xylara, and my heart skipped a beat. Without the cold, sterile lights of the station, her skin glowed with a soft, ethereal luminescence. The anger that had defined her earlier was gone, replaced by a look of profound, spellbinding wonder. "You saved me," she said, stepping toward me. The distance between us felt charged with a different kind of energy, now one that wasn't ancient or mechanical. It was raw and undeniably human. "You threw yourself in front of a plasma fire for a woman who had just threatened your life." "Why?" I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "In my niche of the universe, we have a saying. You don't leave a person behind, especially not when they're standing their ground. Besides," I added with a small, lopsided smile, "you're much more interesting than a cooling valve." She laughed, and the sound was more beautiful than any celestial music. She reached out, her hand gently cupping my cheek. Her touch was soft, lingering, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her violet eyes that wasn't just royalty, it was affection. But the moment was shattered by a low, rhythmic thrumming from the sky. One of the 3 moons began to eclipse, and in the shadow, I saw the flashing lights of high-altitude scanners. "They found us already?" I asked, my blood turning to ice. "Not the Council," Xylara said, her face hardening. "The Harvesters. The ancient enemy that forced my people to hide the heart in the first place. They've been waiting for the signal. By waking the heart, Elias, we haven't just saved each other. We've invited a war." The sky didn't just darken, it bruised. The indigo clouds were torn apart by massive, obsidian-plated monoliths descending from the upper atmosphere. These weren't ships designed for travel. They were machines designed for consumption, the Harvesters. I'd heard stories about them in the deep space bars, ancient, biomechanical nightmares that didn't want territory. They wanted the life force of entire star systems. And we had just rung the dinner bell. "We need to get to the spire," Xylara shouted over the rising howl of the wind. She pointed toward a distant needle of white stone that pierced the canopy of the silver forest. The heart needs to be seated in the planetary core. If the harvesters reach it while it's still unstable, they'll crack this planet like an egg to get to the energy inside. We ran, my boots crunched over luminescent moss and twisted roots, my human lungs burning in the rich, heavy air. Behind us, the forest was being shredded. Red beams of antimatter hissed down from the monoliths, vaporizing the silver trees into clouds of ash. Every time a beam struck near us, the brand on my chest flared with a warning heat. I wasn't just an engineer anymore. I was a living sensor for the heart's distress. "Elias, look out!" Xylara lunged at me, tackling me into a hollow beneath a massive, glowing root just as a harvester drone, a multi-legged horror of jagged metal and red sensors, skittered over our heads. We were pressed together in the cramped, dark space, the scent of the earth and her starlight perfume filling my lungs. Her heart was racing against mine, a frantic, rhythmic drumbeat. In the chaos, our eyes met. The fear was there, sure, but there was something else, a magnetic pull that made the war outside feel a million miles away. She reached up, her thumb brushing a smudge of ash from my forehead. "If we don't make it to that spire," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time, "I want you to know that in all my centuries of rule, I never felt alive until a human dared to look me in the eye and tell me no. I'm a human, Xylara," I breathed, my hand finding the small of her back. "We're experts at surviving things we shouldn't, and I'm not letting the story end in a hole in the ground." The drone above us let out a mechanical shriek and moved on. We scrambled out, the spire now looming over us, a beacon of hope in a collapsing world. But as we reached the base of the white stone structure, the ground erupted. A harvester commander 10 feet of shifting, liquid metal rose from the earth, blocking the entrance. It didn't have a face, just a single glowing red eye that locked onto the brand on my chest. "The catalyst," the machine spoke, its voice a horrific layering of 1,000 distorted souls. "Hand over the heart, and the human's death will be swift. Refuse, and we will peel the memories from his mind while he still breathes." Xylara stepped forward, her obsidian claws extending, but I felt a sudden strange calm wash over me. I looked at the brand, then at the machine. I realized the heart wasn't just a battery or a shield, it was a bridge. And I was the one holding the blueprints. "You want the heart?" I stepped past Xylara, my hand beginning to glow with a blinding, white-hot intensity. "Then you'd better be ready for the human side of it. Because we don't just provide power. We provide the spark." The harvester commander lunged, a blade of liquid metal forming from its arm, screaming toward my throat. But I didn't flinch. I reached out and grabbed the white-hot tether living inside my own chest and threw it forward. The energy didn't just strike the machine, it rewrote it. The brand on my skin erupted in a pillar of pure, unfiltered human defiance, channeling the heart's power through the one thing these machines couldn't comprehend: raw emotion. The commander disintegrated into a cloud of harmless silver dust, scattered by the wind of 1,000-year-old promise finally kept. Xylara and I charged into the center of the spire. The air was humming at a frequency that made my teeth ache. In the center of the room was a pedestal of liquid light. "Now, Elias," she cried. I slammed my hand onto the surface, and the heart of the nebula finally clicked into place. A pulse of violet and gold exploded outward, traveling through the ground, up the trees, and into the very atmosphere. It wasn't a weapon, it was a reboot. In the sky, the massive obsidian monoliths began to stall and crumble, their ancient, stolen power neutralized by the heart's new, vibrant frequency. The harvesters were gone, fleeing back into the dark voids of the galaxy, unable to survive in a world that now breathed with the rhythm of 2 united souls. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. We stood on the balcony of the spire, watching the 3 moons emerge from the shadows. The war was over, but the galaxy was forever changed. Human engineering and the lean spirit had done what an entire empire's military couldn't. Xylara turned to me, the starlight catching the violet depths of her eyes. She didn't look like a queen anymore. She looked like someone who had finally found home. She stepped closer, her hand resting on my chest, right where the brand had faded into a faint, permanent scar. You saved my people, Elias. But more than that. You saved me from the silence. I smiled, pulling her closer as the silver forest below began to glow with a new, peaceful light. Like I said, we're experts at fixing things. She leaned in. And as the first rays of a new dawn broke over the horizon, the distance between our worlds vanished completely. We weren't just an engineer and a queen anymore. We were the start of something the universe had never seen before, and it was going to be a hell of a story. I hope you enjoyed this journey to the edge of the nebula. If you want more epic tales of human bravery and galactic romance, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with your fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel HFY Soundscape and ring that bell so you never miss a new adventure. What should our next tale be about? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars.